He kōna I purangi tēnei nā te reo irirangi o Aotearoa.
Doubtless Bay, Northland. 17 kilometres wide with depths of over 30 metres. Somewhere beneath the water surface lies the oldest known European artefact in New Zealand. In the past 4 episodes, you've heard Kelly Tarlton's story, his treasure hunting adventures, his work building a world-first aquarium, and a treasure hunt he left incomplete. Along the way, we've met a lot of Kelly's old friends and collaborators. People with deep experience in looking for underwater treasure. Now, finally, it's time to put this all together. I'm Hamish Williams, and this is Kelly Tarlton's final treasure hunt. I've been told repeatedly that Kelly's key to success was preparation and research.
When we did have a holiday together as a family, he would be in the local library doing research or meeting other divers and finding out information from them.
The ocean's a big place. You have to do all you can to narrow down the search area. You'd think this would be the easy bit. Kelly found this anchor already. All we have to do is follow his lead.
5 minutes stopped, 10 minutes hard. Seemed to dig good holes, and so we've been trying it each day since.
Throughout the series, we've been lucky to have Kelly's own tape recordings about his adventures.
In the afternoon, Pete Osleton found a rib of a small ship, too small for the lutein, I think, but looks the right sort of timber.
But unfortunately, from what we've been able to find, he never recorded himself talking about his hunt for the De Surville anchors. Kelly did, however, write up meticulous notes about the discovery of the first 2 anchors by himself and Mike Beardsley. And I'm told he sent copies of these notes to libraries in New Zealand as well as Australia.
It's a particularly wet day in Auckland, and I am heading to the Auckland Library in the heart of the CBD. Let's see what I've got here. The search and discovery of anchors lost 1769 by French explorer De Surville.
The detail in the document is incredible.
It says here now that they were anchored in 18 fathoms.
As I read through the notes, Kelly retells the story of the St Jean Baptiste and why the anchors are so significant, as well as the methods he used for recovery and preservation. All interesting stuff. But it's the final conclusion I'm most interested in.
There still remains to be found one big anchor to the east of the 2 discovered. It seems a magnetometer search will be necessary to locate these. Details of the exact location of the 2 recovered anchors are held by the Museum of Shipwrecks at Waitangi Bay of Islands and the Historic Places Trust in Wellington.
It sounds like these coordinates for the first 2 anchors could be the key. We know the 3rd anchor was found just a few hundred metres to the east of that location.
Thank you.
So all I need to do is find these coordinates in the more detailed notes Kelly says were filed at his Shipwreck Museum and the Historic Places Trust. Now, the Shipwreck Museum is long gone, but the Historic Places Trust is still around. These days, it's known as Heritage New Zealand. I contacted their office in Wellington and they were great. Immediately, they went on their own treasure hunt, diving into the archives, looking for what would be a critical piece of information in finding the 3rd anchor. But I was warned their search might take a bit of time. So I figured I'd start heading up to Doubtless Bay. By the time I got there, they'd have the coordinates ready to send me. And rather than taking State Highway 1, I decided to sail my way up in Bacharach, my yacht, aka the floating footpath. It was an opportunity to reflect on my hopes for finding the anchor and on Kelly's remarkable life.
It's these islands right behind me, the Poor Knights Islands out here, where Kelly ended up really learning and honing his craft as a diver. Jacques Cousteau actually said that these were among his most favourite diving spots in the entire world. And the most amazing thing about the Poor Knights Islands is that it largely remained undiscovered until the 1950s, 1960s, when a pair of would-be divers, spearfishermen at that, started finding things that academics believed, simply put, shouldn't have been there.
After a relatively easy sail round Cape Brett into the Bay of Islands, I landed at Waitangi, home to our nation's treaty grounds, but also the Tui, the site of Kelly Tarlton's Museum of Shipwrecks. I didn't know it then, but it would be the last time I'd ever see it. Literally today, as I'm recording this program, I woke up to some terrible news.
The historic three-masted ship, the Tui, has been engulfed in flames. This is in Paihia in the Bay of Islands this morning. Fire broke out on the ship just after 4 a.m. Earlier, I spoke to Derek Gerritsen from Big Fish Bay.
The Tarlton family was shattered. Here's Fiona on RNZ.
Such a shock, and I just cried my eyes out, to be honest,
What are your earliest memories of that ship?
Actually, my earliest memories in life were around the Tui. So I was with Dad on the boat, and we went up the Opal.
A sad end to Kelly's legacy in Waitangi. But his shipwreck museum had actually already been closed for 20 years when the Tui caught fire. In the year 2000, most of the treasure was stolen.
The police are investigating the weekend theft of jewellery and coins worth more than $300,000 from the Kelly Tarlton Shipwreck Museum in Northland.
The story was national news. RNZ's Morning Report interviewed a distraught Nicole Tarlton after the theft was discovered.
Yeah, it's why people came on. They came to see the sunken treasure. And it's just catastrophic in terms of our business and, our mum's livelihood.
Indeed. Well, let's hope that they are recovered quickly and put back where they should be. Thank you for joining us this morning. Nicole Tarlton, daughter of the late Kelly.
But those treasures were never put back where they belonged. Although the thief was quickly identified and prosecuted, he never revealed the location of the gold and jewels. Without its star attraction, the museum was closed for good. There was a plan to reinvent the Tui as the home to a marine education centre. Those plans, quite literally, went up in flames. As I set sail from Waitangi and I headed further north, I got an email from Heritage New Zealand. It was more bad news.
We've canvassed several people in the organisation, and I'm afraid we haven't found the source of this information.
Bugger, bugger, bugger. Without the coordinates of the first two anchors, it becomes a lot harder to pinpoint the third. But it turns out there might be another source for the information that I'm after. You might remember that Kelly's daughter Fiona said her dad had written the coordinates on a sticky note, which was then lost. But she thinks she might know where it went.
We also did sell some of the contents of the Shipwreck Museum. So we own the Shipwreck Museum up in Kelly Tarlton's Museum of Shipwrecks up in Waitangi. And after about 33 years of ownership, we sold her. There was an auction and certain things were sold off that.
The auction Fiona's talking about was held in late November 2002. Run by the Auckland-based auction house Webbs, I managed to find a copy of all the items that went up for sale.
The Kelly Tarlton Library, archives and shipwreck memorabilia offered in this catalogue present his many admirers with a perfect opportunity to secure a tangible reminder of his achievements. The archives are a marine researcher's delight, and the variety of artefacts on offer is enormous.
Deep in this catalogue was lot number 352.
The De Surville anchors, lost Doubtless Bay 1769, found 1974. 2 box files and a ring binder containing correspondence, cuttings, photographs and other papers relating to the salvage of the De Surville anchors. $300 to $500.
And remarkably, when I contacted Webbs, it turned out that the lot had been sold to someone I already knew, Kelly's brother-in-law, Peter Pettigrew. I was flummoxed. Peter hadn't mentioned anything about these documents when I'd interviewed him a few months earlier. But he had plenty of other advice on finding the anchor. He even had a little dossier ready to give me.
I've given this pack to friends who are serious divers who want to go and find it, and none of them have found it again because they don't take a sextant, and they don't take the sextant readings from the journal and do what Kelly did.
Peter insists the sextant is the key. It's an old-fashioned navigational tool which uses the position of the sun and a bit of clever trigonometry to precisely calculate your position based on landmarks. It's the tool De Surville himself used to draw his maps of Doubtless Bay.
And you plot exactly where he says he was. And if you do that, that's where the anchor is.
Back in the 1980s, Peter and Kelly used this tool to reverse engineer the location of the first anchor. But they also used a much more modern tool, a magnetometer. It's a magnetic sensor, or fish as they call it, and it can detect metal deep beneath the water's surface.
So when you get a reading, throw a flag with floating an anchor over the side there, and then you're coming back on exactly the same track and you get the reading again. And then you throw your other flag out here. And then you just go back with the boat to where you think is roughly the midpoint, anchor the boat, and go down and have a look. We basically sort of said, right, well, you be 25 metres that way, I'll be 25 metres this way, and Hung will be 25 metres this way. And I was the one who just almost came right down on top of it, nearly speared me up the bum. I could see, the viz was quite good. I could see Kelly. You can actually just be heard underwater sometimes if you're screaming. I waved like mad at him and he looked over and he came over.
Peter pulled out the photo Kelly had taken of the anchor. It shows the anchor rising dramatically from the seabed, held in place by one of its flukes, jammed in a rocky reef.
You can see how it's sticking up, like that. So it's a huge anchor, and this fluke is in a reef, and it'll never come out again. You'd have to destroy the anchor to get it out. But nobody can find it again now because they don't know how to use a sextant.
So I need to find someone with a sextant to have any chance.
Yeah, I've been back myself. I wouldn't have a clue how to use a sextant. We used to hire a big game boat, and Rosemary would come with us typically, and we'd dive at the nights and fish all the way up to Doubtless Bay, try and find the anchor and come back again. I could never find it again, even though I sort of thought I knew exactly where it was. Surprising how hard it is to find something.
But hang on, you might be thinking, why are we worrying about using a sextant if Peter has the exact coordinates from that auction of Kelly's old notes? Well, here we ran into a conundrum. Peter insists that while he bought some of Kelly's old notes, he did not buy the documents about the De Surville anchors. I went back to Webbs asking if they'd made a mistake, and they were very firm, nope, we sold them to Peter. That's what it says in our records. So what's happened here? Honestly, I have no idea. I have to admit, I was starting to feel confused and maybe even a bit discouraged. Kelly filed the exact coordinates of the De Surville anchors with Heritage New Zealand. There's a post-it note to his wife Rosemary and this box of documents supposedly sold at auction, but all these records seem to have vanished into thin air. This could all be a coincidence, but maybe not. From the very start of this project, I've got the feeling I'm not being told the whole story. A lot of people I've spoken to about Kelly's treasure hunts have had an almost conspiratorial attitude. They've often been very wary of talking on tape, and even when they do, There are lots of long pauses and meaningful glances. I've been asked more than once to pause the recording to have secrets revealed to me in confidence. As Kelly's old mate Keith Gordon explained, secrecy is part and parcel of the treasure hunting trade.
It's like some of these things that we do find, we're reluctant to tell too much. If you disclose too much, people will go in and loot and that.
I admitted to Keith I was starting to worry that without the coordinates, I'd never finish Kelly's final treasure hunt. But he insisted it was still worth pursuing.
It's just a matter of spending time and being in the right place.
Keith's words gave me some hope. And so did the words of Kelly's other old mates. These are people with an immense amount of experience and even highly successful careers built on underwater salvage. People like Steve McIntyre, who's worked for the marine service company Seaworks for more than 40 years.
You've got to get some good electronic surveying equipment, which is all available in New Zealand to get that done. And you've got to have some good divers, and I think you've got a pretty good chance of doing it if you go about it the right way.
Kelly's daughter Nicole, who was with him, Peter and Hung when the anchor was found, also had some words of encouragement.
I'd just be doing the same what Dad had done and go back with a magnetometer.
Yes, the magnetometer. This is the key piece of equipment that Kelly was given by film director David Lean in the 1970s. What a magnetometer does is measure the Earth's magnetic field. It can detect variations in that field caused by objects. Objects like a 4.5 metre iron anchor. I've got a list of organisations, companies and people around New Zealand and even Australia that have these. So I hit the phones to plead my case.
Oh, kia ora. My name's Hamish Williams. I'm producing a podcast about I've
Kelly
been
Tarlton.
given your number because apparently you might be one of the best people, I'm told, in Australia to talk to about called Kelly Tarlton's final treasure hunt. I just wanted to have a chat to you about... I just wondered if you'd had a chance to have a look at some of the details around this treasure hunt that we're doing.
Everyone I contacted was enthusiastic at first, but then they started talking about money. A magnetometer is a specialised piece of equipment. You can't just hire it for the day and give it a whirl like a handheld metal detector on a beach. You need an expert to be able to read the information. This is a skill that only comes with years of experience and, as such, comes with a price tag of thousands and thousands of dollars. I do know one person, though, who does own a magnetometer, Keith Gordon. But there's a problem. His mag currently isn't working, and while he continues to try to get it fixed, we're not making any headway with the hunt itself. Keith, however, said I should go on without him.
It's like anything in the ocean, you know, it's time. I mean, you might go do one trip and sort of survey a certain area, you don't find it, you go away, and then you might, if you're really keen, you might go back again, you know.
So Keith is suggesting we just go out and survey the area without the help of a magnetometer. Maybe take some sonar readings and build a map at the bottom. Just dive down and take a look around. Slight problem with that. I am not a scuba diver, and my boat doesn't have the kind of sonar you need for mapping the seabed. In all honesty, I'm realising that I'm hopelessly out of my depth. I'm going to need some help. But thankfully in the end, I didn't even need to ask for it. My partner in crime in making this podcast is Ellie Callahan, and it just so happens that her partner, Brendan Wade, is a marine engineer. And as Ellie started chatting with Brendan, he got more and more invested in the mystery of the anchor.
You know, Brendan, I don't know, man, but I kind of feel like you've become more obsessed with finding this anchor than us.
You can see why people get addicted to hunting things like this, right? because you don't want to just leave this question there, and you don't want people to come behind you and go, well, you didn't do a good enough job finding it. So you kind of, it really plays on that mind of the perfectionist, right? You really want to do the best you can so you don't leave any stone unturned, because now you've got your hat in the ring. It's adventuring, right? It's sort of anything that's interesting and makes you feel alive. I've been involved over the years in a few different operations, saving boats from running aground and pulling various things off, and we do a lot of anchoring work in the subsea industry, which is anything below the waterline. So this anchor somewhat falls into that.
You've gone and become pretty good mates with Keith and Dave. How did that happen?
They have worked in very adjacent industries for the last, 50 or 60 years. So we've got a lot in common. We approach things in very similar ways, and I'd like to think that we've built a fair bit of trust with each other as well. That I think you've got to understand the people as well. Dave and Keith and the rest of the Underwater Heritage Group, they hold a lot of these things quite dear to their hearts. This one particularly, but a lot of their other stuff as well. And it's because, as you'll have seen, there's a lot of time and dedication and effort that goes into finding all of this information. It's not something you stumble across. So when some young gun turns up and says, hey, give me all your information, I'm going to go find this thing, the first thing that they're going to do is go, well, I'm not going to give you this. Who are you? So I kind of had to do a little bit of legwork with them. They strong-armed me into joining their Underwater Heritage Group, which has been really nice, and met some like-minded people.
Talk to me about the Underwater Heritage Trust. When you joined them, was there sort of like a ceremony? I'm imagining, robes, signing documents and blood, that sort of thing?
We've got lots of old artifacts around and lots of red wine. And no, it was, I think it was more of a pay your money, we'll vet you, and then welcome to the club. Let's go do some cool adventures.
Critically for our purpose, you also own a boat with some pretty sophisticated scanning gear. Did you already have that, or did you go and get that rigged up just to go and have a look for this anchor?
Yes is the answer to that. Yes to both. There's some of it which I use for other purposes, fancy transducers for looking for fish and things, and I'm a bit of a keen fisho. But also I built quite a bit of an array because I knew that we were looking for a particular thing. So there's a lot of additional stuff that had gone in. Probably took 2 or 3 weeks of work to set it all up, and 3 or 4 days of testing.
And look, agreeing to take the family up to Doubtless Bay to do some scanning, how much convincing did they take to join you on the adventure?
Well, the first thing you do is you tell them you go into a beautiful white sandy beach, and then you load up the boat with all your fancy gear, and you load the car up with all their gear so they can't see it. And then once you get up there, you mentioned that you're going to have to go out and start looking for something real quick. And all of a sudden it blows out to 6 or 7 days of looking instead of the 2 or 3 you were originally going to do and spend the rest of the time with the family. So they were really excited when they first found out. I think it probably waned a little bit when they got out there, and I made them all seasick for the first day.
And that first day, let me tell you, it was a wild ride. I was still making my way up the coast of Northland on Bacharach when Ellie sent me through a photo from Brendan. It was a screenshot from his side-scanning sonar array. Straight away, I got my recorder running and gave her a call. Okay, so what are we looking at?
So we don't know. It looks like a lot like an anchor though, doesn't it?
It looks a hell of a lot like an anchor.
Yeah. So Brendan just thought he'd take the boat out this morning by himself and just do a quick survey. And it's not actually over, it's kind of in between the bits where he thought it might be.
Right.
And where Dave and Keith thought it might be.
Yep.
So he's just like surveying a whole area.
Yep.
And that's what's popped up on the sonar.
So he's put a marker down for that area?
Yes. And then he's going to finish off his survey for that area and come back in for lunch. So we're just pumping. And then he's going to pick up me.
Hey, yay! Brendan arrived back on shore, picked up Ellie and their daughter, then headed back out on the water.
There's a very, very defined rectangle with a very abrupt end, and at about 45 degrees there's a thin line coming up to a triangle. So we found this thing that looks very, very similar to the photo, and it's in a very, very similar position to where the photo is. So I'm not saying that that is an anchor, But what I'm saying is that if it isn't an anchor, I've got not a Scooby-Doo of a clue of what it is.
Brendan was going to use an ROV, or remotely operated vehicle, basically an underwater drone. It's a lot cheaper and easier than sending down a scuba diver. Attached by a tether line, Brendan can see what it sees under the water on his phone. He operates it with what looks like a modified PlayStation controller. In the end, the ROV didn't play out. Brendan spent 3 days driving it around the bottom of the ocean without seeing anything. So we decided to do things the old-fashioned way, with a scuba diver. This was a reasonably deep dive, about 30 metres. Neither I nor Brendan had the credentials to do it safely. Luckily, we had someone who would go in our place. Kelly Withers, an experienced diver who also used to work at Kelly Tarlton's aquarium.
I was a fisher, so basically everything to do with the tanks and sea life. Everything from stitching stingrays back up when they did their mating processes and cut each other in half, through to feeding all the fish and stuff, doing the public talks, doing all the cleaning. There was a lot of scrubbing rocks.
Kelly got on his kit and plunged over the side of Brendan's boat. After a few tense minutes, he surfaced, but he hadn't seen much of anything.
We had the wind blowing one way, the tide going one way, and swell going another. So it was a bit hard to kind of know where you were. And when you're just dropping with about 5 metres of viz and 30 metres of water, you get to the bottom and you're not quite sure where you are.
But Kelly and Brendan weren't discouraged.
So looking at the side scan, there's 3 rocks in a row, and then just off them there's something that looks suspiciously like the anchor, especially compared to the that photo of old KT on it. We think that we worked out which rocks they are, and they match where it would make sense they drag to, the anchor drag to, sorry.
It looks a lot like an anchor. If it is not an anchor, I don't know what the fuck it is, but it might not be an anchor.
One of the things I've definitely took away from that dive is that would be weird for the geology. Because I went down being like, oh, I've definitely seen rock outcrops look like that. But then when I got down there, that's not what the rest of it looks like.
What we can see is a long shank which measures about 4 to 5 metres long. Sorry, a long object which measures about 4 to 5 metres, running at a diagonal with a reasonable amount of gear at the bottom of it, and it juts back out at another 45-degree angle. And it's at that 45-degree angle that runs for about a metre that it's got quite a lot of shading and shadowing behind it, which is synonymous with what you would expect an anchor fluke to look like.
The next day, Brendan and Kelly are out on the water before the sun's risen. At this point, we're all cautiously excited. Brendan called up his new best mate, Dave Moran, to see what he reckoned. He got the idea to drop a weighted rope down from the boat to the spot on the seabed where this mysterious anchor-shaped signal was located. The theory was Kelly could just follow the rope straight down to it.
The clarity of the water is a lot better down here at the moment.
It's a lot better. You can see that rock just up there.
Yeah. Let's see if it's actually on the bottom.
As Brendan keeps the boat in position, Kelly dives down, following the rope to the point of interest. The moment of truth is near.
We think we've proved what is down at our object. And I stand by what I said after I said all that stuff yesterday, that it might not be an anchor. We think, with a combination of throwing the ROV down and Kelly having a dive on it, we're pretty confident that it's just a rock that's shaped like an anchor.
pretty much as soon as I saw this rock sticking up, it's got the kind of that spade shape of the fluke, and a couple of smaller rocks that are just really low lying, just kind of sitting in the sand. Kind of the first glance, you're like, oh yeah, that looks like an anchor, and you get closer, it's obviously not.
I guess it's all part of the process, is we've kind of eliminated this from being the area, which leads to the question, well, if it's not here, then where?
Brendan isn't prepared to give up completely. He rescans the area with his sonar, sends down the ROV again, looking for even the smallest detail. There's nothing. A couple of days later, Brendan walked me through all the scanning he'd done and explained his frustration about the anchor-shaped rock.
It was an interesting thing. There's all this adrenaline rushing and not a lot of sleep happening and lots of discussions around how things could be and why they would be here and potentially changing some of the history around what people thought might have happened with the anchors.
I can see why you thought this was the anchor, because it looks so much like it in shape. It's uncanny.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. And, I generally try not to get too excited about things like this because I've seen it go wrong 100 times in my line of work. But you look at something like this and you go, well, it's at the outer edge of a reef. It doesn't look like anything else down there. It's giving us a really, really strong ping. And then we go back to our bathymetric charts. So you can see here, this is literally right on the outer edge of this reef, which is exactly where you would expect. If you were dragging anchor this way, from east to west, that's a perfect place for your anchor to get
So
caught
what you're telling me is that, this is actually in the realm of where, that pre-research that you'd done, you thought, look, this is a conceivable area that it would be.
Absolutely.
And so you found this rock that just happens to look like an anchor in the same spot.
In the exact same spot. So what do you think? Of course.
That is uncanny.
Isn't it just, yeah. It's just like I could hear Kelly laughing, putting the knife in and twisting it as it was dawning on me that actually this is just a rock. I could hear him going, you thought it was going to be this easy. Because of course this is literally the first day we were out there.
Yeah.
I remember just thinking there's no way that I could possibly have walked into this straight away. And sure enough, I wasn't.
It's gutting, and I think I might have some idea now how Kelly Tarlton felt looking for the General Grant or the Lutine. You go through all this effort, all these moments of excitement. Success seems just around the corner, but you end up empty-handed.
So that's what we found, was a big fat zero.
But then, just as all hope seemed lost, I got another phone call from my producer, Ellie.
Okay, that's recording now.
Okay, so Brendan was driving home to Dunmore to have a bit of a chat. He's pulled out a newspaper clipping from 2014. And in the newspaper clipping, there is a picture of a man standing in front of a French anchor.
Okay.
It matches the dimensions and the age and looks a lot like the anchor we're looking for.
Or has it been preserved? Did it look like this anchor had been preserved?
Yeah, it looks like it's been preserved.
So that's a massive undertaking in and of itself.
Huge. And in 2014, they reckon it would have been $20,000 worth of scrap metal.
So really, what we're looking at here is the potential that somebody mounted a highly clandestine salvage and preservation operation only to then just sell it for scrap metal.
Yeah. Weird, eh?
I love it. I love it.
Just something else to add to the mix.
Next time, is this the missing De Surville anchor? If so, who pulled it up and when? That's coming up on the thrilling conclusion of Kelly Tarlton's final treasure hunt. Thanks for listening to Kelly Tarlton's Final Treasure Hunt. If you like the show, be sure to follow us on your favourite podcasting app, and if you want to help more people find the show, please leave us a review. Kelly Tarlton's Final Treasure Hunt is written and presented by me, Hamish Williams. Our producers are Ali Callahan, William Ray, Phil Vine and Justin Gregory. Our sound engineers are William Saunders, Phil Benge and Mark Chesterman. Our production coordinator is Brianna Juritich and executive producer is Tim Watkin. Special thanks to the Tarlton family for their support and trust in making this podcast. There is so much more to the life of Kelly Tarlton. There are some great books on his life available. We've made some recommendations on the show's webpage. You can find that at rnz.co.nz/podcasts.